That sounds like it's quite a process. And it also seems to me that there's a prerequisite needed, which is something like a willingness in an individual to start this process of practicing presence and other things. Or is there a course you can
Well, first of all,
follow and then,
I just want to say I love your interviewing style. The reason I love it is because this is why I love Dutch people, because they're super direct and practical.
yeah,
What do I do? How do I
yeah.
do this? Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple, a practical podcast that guides clinical leaders and healthcare managers to create trust and support with their teams. I'm your host, Trace Hobson. Join me for weekly interviews, practical tools, and inspiring transformational stories of bringing people together in healthcare. Now, let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple. My name is Trace Hobson. I'm your host, and today we have a very special treat in store for you. Caroline Vierman, my colleague and my periodic co-host, interviews me today on some of the things we've been talking about in our show that relate to creating a safe space. What is that? What is a safe space exactly? Is it psychological safety? Is it psychological health and safety? What exactly are we doing? And how do we create that, practically speaking? Now, this is also the introduction to a 6-part series that we're going to do over the course of the next several weeks. We'll mix this in with some of the other interviews that we're doing as well. The series is based on safe space systemic team coaching and how managers and leaders who work in disrupted systems, healthcare systems, or disrupted teams can begin to apply these principles so that they can shift the culture of their team. We thought it would be helpful for you if we just broke this down into bite-sized chunks to tell you how to create a safe space. What is a safe space to begin with, and how do we set that up? What is a meeting or a huddle or a conversation that we can have that will begin to have these kinds of results with people feeling safe in their team and showing up and being the best that they can be at work, and also feeling supported to be their best at home as well. It's a really vibrant conversation and introduction today that will give you an overview of the series. And then we're going to break that down into bite-sized chunks that you can digest and interact with. Now, stay to the end of the episode because I'm also going to share a free resource with you where you can check in on what it is that your healthcare leadership superpower is. What is a superpower that you have that you may not be aware of? Well, you can find out with a very quick and fun quiz that I've created that's freely accessible to you if you wait to the end of the show. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the show.
So I have a question for you about,
So you're interviewing me today. That's what's happening.
yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm interviewing you. And I'm
I'm
so
in the hot seat. I
curious.
feel like I'm in the hot seat. It feels like
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah. I'm so curious to learn more, to hear more about a safe space for teams and
Yeah.
what that means to you. So maybe let's start there. So what does it actually mean, a safe space for a team
Yeah. It's
to
interesting
you?
that you're bringing this up because right now I'm in the middle of graduate studies and a research effort and a literature review, actually. And one of the components that I'm researching is a safe space. And it's funny because we use this, many people use that term all the time in their work, whether they're a leader or a manager or a coach. We talk about safe spaces all the time, but what do we actually mean? That's a really good question. And so, from my perspective, the way that I define that is a combination of things that come together. First of all, it's about top down safety. So, psychological safety and the work that Amy Edmondson has done, and also the Canadian Standard for Psychological Health and Safety, gives us all kinds of research that we can look at that talks about the kind of environment that we need to feel psychologically safe. The challenge with that is that for my, for my liking, it's a little too focused on the intellect. And so for me, psychological safety is top down safety. Well, we also need bottom up safety, or what I would characterize as neurobiological safety. So,
Yeah. So,
uh,
sorry for interrupting, but there's already something here that uh, what exactly do you mean by top-down safety
mhm.
and bottom-up safety?
Yeah. So, top down safety is the idea that we can think about safety and psychologically safe spaces, and we can talk about those. And we often do that in organizations. It's pretty intellectualized. And so, talking about something doesn't mean we actually experience it. So top down safety, the way I'm saying it, it's like, yeah, we have all the research and all the knowledge and all of those things are true, but we're still missing a component, which is that bottom up piece. Like, are we feeling safe in our body?
Okay.
And so when I think about neurobiologically safe spaces, they're about, I'm leaning into the work of Stephen Porges, Dr. Stephen Porges' work on polyvagal safety, and looking at how he talks about this idea of neuroception, that our body has a mechanism in it that's constantly scanning the environment for safe signals or signals of threat. And we don't, the key to that is that we're not consciously aware of that. That's just going on like an autonomic system. And so when we have a safe space, we've considered both those components coming together. So, yes, psychologically safe spaces that we can talk about, but also, what about a somatically safe space where we start to generate safety from the inside out? And so, when I talk about this with my clients and with teams, I talk about three fundamental practices. Number one is presence. You can't have a safe space without the practice of being present. Intrinsic safety comes from being present. So that's number one. That's in the Venn diagram. That's the first circle. Then the second circle is about listening, and not just listening with your ears, but listening with your whole body. And then the third circle is systemic dialogues or powerful questions. When you are doing those three, it generates what I call a safe space. In other words, you begin to have an experience of safety coming from inside of you that oftentimes transcends circumstances. Like, even though the circumstances might feel unsafe, I, as a human being, have the ability to generate a safe space. And then we can access all kinds of systemic information that we miss if we're sort of in that reactive state. So, I mean, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's, as I said, I'm right in the middle of researching this and kind of
Yeah.
really getting clearer on what is a safe space and why is it important. So, yeah, that's a great question. I'm still kind of wrestling with it myself.
Yeah, yeah. This all sounds really, really good, of course. It also sounds like it's quite something to achieve this.
Hmm.
Presence. Well, actually, what does presence mean and what is a presence practice then? Maybe you
Mhm.
can say something about that, but it starts with presence, you said, and then there are two other components. Uh, so, how would you ever be able to create a safe space like you described it just now in an environment where there's so much work going on and where there's so much workload also for
Yeah, it's
people who work there?
yeah, for my experience, for this experience of a safe space for myself and for the people I work with, it literally starts one breath at a time. And so when I take a deep breath, and I remember when I was a manager in that circumstance and a leader in what you're talking about, constant chaos, a culture of urgency and reactiveness all day long, to take a deep breath at first when I was invited to do that seemed like the most impossible thing I could do. Like, I would actually like force a breath inside of my body and like, okay, I'm done. Let's move on. Let's go. And
Yeah.
it really is an invitation to slow down to the speed of your presence, is the way I say it, because this practice for me started literally with one deep breath. And then became 2 and it became 3. And so the smallest systemic input that I can say that served me in this was to be able to do that, take that deep breath. And what that started to give me access to was to be able to listen and to be able to ask more powerful questions that served me and the people around me in a different way than before when I couldn't take that deep breath. And so it's really a small step at a time to slow down inside of the chaotic situations you might be in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's plenty of other people's work that we can point to that talks about this too. Whether it's Stephen Porges's work or Daniel Siegel's work, or I could go on and on, but there does seem to be this resilience that we can access when we slow down and pay attention to what's going on inside of our bodies.
So that sounds like it's quite a process. And it also seems to me that there's a prerequisite needed, which is something like a willingness in an individual to start this process of practicing presence and other things? Or is there a course you can
Well, first of all,
follow and then,
I just want to say I love your interviewing style. It's very, the reason I love it is because this is why I love Dutch people, because they're super direct and practical.
yeah,
What do I do? How do I
yeah,
do this?
yeah, because
And it
otherwise
sounds like you need to
it's a
have some
lot of,
prerequisites. It sounds like you need to have some prerequisites. Such a challenging question. I love it. I love it. So, does there have to be willingness? That's such a interesting question. The first
yeah,
answer I feel like is yes, but there's something underneath that for me because for so long I was unwilling. And what invited me to become more willing was the pain that my life kept feedback, like the pain that not having presence kept giving me in my life and in my relationships. So, was there a requirement to be willing? Yeah. How did I get there though? How did I become willing to take that one deep breath? It was really experiencing suffering systemically in my own body and in my relationships that invited me to slow down and take that deep breath. And so, um, that's been my experience, and I've also seen that happen a lot in organizations or teams as well, where people hit the wall of one kind or another. They have like problems at work or problems at home that repeat and keep showing up, and it's like their lives are having a conversation with them and trying to tell them something, just like my life was having a conversation with me and trying to tell me something. And so I feel like, that pain was really necessary for me to be able to slow down and listen in a different way. But I'd also like to think that it doesn't have to be so painful too. That's my hope when I work with other people, that maybe they can start to listen without the kind of pain that I've had to go through, hopefully.
yeah, yeah, that's what you would want for anybody,
Yeah.
maybe. So that's on a personal level then, that
Mhm.
you sort of decide, well, I'm ready to start being with myself in another way, take a deep breath and be with whatever shows up. But when you're in a team, everybody in the team is in a different place with their process of hitting the wall, for
Mhm.
example, and being willing to find different ways. So how would you work with safety then in a team? And
Mhm.
without a trainer, because when there's a trainer or somebody who guides you through the whole process, then maybe there's another process, of course, and maybe that's easier. But when
Mhm.
you're in your team and you're a manager in that team or a team member,
Mhm.
so where
Well,
do you start?
I think something you said that it's important is that there is a real value of having um, different change agents that can step into situations with you to be able to create that safe space at first. Because to your point, it is really hard at first. It can feel almost impossible. So I think part of the reason why I do the work that I do is because leaders and managers and teams that I work with really do appreciate having a space holder that can kind of help them to capture the first rung of the ladder a little bit. But that said, even though that's true, I also, as a space holder that goes into situations, I had to start somewhere. And I also still have to experience or do experience the same thing when I step into a disrupted team or system. And I really believe that we can be system inputs with the way that we are working within ourselves. And so when I step into that situation, or if let's say you're a manager that's not got a guide and you're trying to step in and create a safe space for your team, I really feel strongly that it starts with you as a system input. So how are you generating safety for yourself psychologically and neurobiologically? And if you're not, what sort of supports do you need in place so that you can start to do that? And this is where a coach can come in or a support can come in and really help that initial first person to start to set a new tone for the team, because you do have to set a new tone for the
Yeah.
team. Otherwise, nothing will change, right? So it's an interesting question because I, I don't think we're meant to do it alone, actually, as I think about it. I think we're meant to do it together in relationship so that we can access the kind of shift that we're talking about and then also sustain it over time as well.
Mm. Yeah, so to me, listening to you, it seems there are a few prerequisites. Difficult word for me.
What are the prerequisites that you hear?
What I hear is that it seems that there needs to be a sense of awareness that something else is needed than all the things that have already been tried before. Because when
Hmm.
there's something not well or not working well in a team, probably a lot has been tried already. So there needs to
Hmm.
be awareness. That doesn't work. And maybe we need something else. And then there is a willingness to try seems to me there needs to be a willingness to try something else in the sense of this doesn't seem like very hard. Yeah, how would you say that in English? In Dutch we would say we have soft approaches and hard approaches.
Hmm.
Hard is very much the project and the 10 steps, and then we're somewhere. And this seems to be more a soft approach.
Hmm.
And there needs to be, well, that's how it feels to me. There needs to be an openness, maybe that's
Hmm.
another word than willingness, to get started with, to start with that.
Yeah, I think that it's a it might seem like a soft approach at first, but it is actually um, soft and practically applied, or what you're calling hard. And I think that people are aware of what's going on, even if it's at the level of what you just said, which is that this what we're doing isn't working. And I'm noticing that in the transition from command and control hierarchical leadership to something else, because let's be honest, hierarchical control or command and control system of leadership is not working anymore. And especially in disrupted complex systems like healthcare, it's just not working anymore. It's not that we don't need hierarchy. We do. There are certain parts of the organization we need that in. But when it comes to teams and leadership and creating creative solutions to complex problems, we need something new. And that's a new kind of leadership. So we're coming up against the fact that that old style of leadership that we're still trying is not working, and it's a it's creating symptoms in the system that are really clear. It's creating burnout, it's creating distress, disconnection on teams, dysfunction. In Canada we call disrespectful workplace issues. So there's bullying, harassment, discrimination. There's disrespectful communication. All of those are not problems to solve. It's information. And
Mhm.
so at some level, the manager or the leader is aware that those things are happening. And so that's kind of the first awareness that happens.
Yeah.
The other awareness that's going on oftentimes for leaders too, that I had as well, was this idea that I'm supposed to fix all of these problems and I have no idea how to do that, but I'm going to hide that. I'm going to pretend like I'm supposed to have all the answers and just act like I have all the answers. And that's a very isolating command and control style. But what we need now is a more shared relational leadership where we create environments on teams that we can work together. And this is where it can transition. And what I'm creating in my graduate studies right now is what I'm calling safe space systemic team coaching and leadership. And it's the basis of my thesis, but it's taking everything we're talking about and then embedding a safe space systemic team coach in with a team or a manager and working with them on the practical areas of their work and helping them to accelerate and embed psychological safety as well as neurobiological safety. And how do we do that? Well, we do that in the day-to-day meetings and huddles and projects that we're working on, and with the help of a coach who is looking towards that leader and that leadership team as a succession plan, so that they're not having to be there forever. They're just there for a period of time. You have to your point, you have to get into the hard skills and actions they're taking in the operation in order to embed this new way of working and then move on to something new. And that's what I'm studying. But I also firmly believe it because I've been doing it with teams as well. That is what makes the difference in the change, and also protects us from talking about the soft stuff alone, because we
Yeah.
need to do practical things. Otherwise, what's the
Yeah.
point of this,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I really like the way you're framing that question.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So we spoke about before the prerequisites, or before a team or an individual is ready to start working with safe spaces and developing safe spaces. And we spoke about presence.
Yeah.
You said something about this systemic work. And
Hmm.
then there's also listening.
Hmm.
You said the second step. So could you elaborate a bit more on listening? Because we're
Hmm.
listening all the time, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. I think that what we're having in that third circle of the Venn diagram, that's kind of my way of framing this, is that we are invited into systemic dialogues. And the reason I say that is because all these things we're talking about that show up as problems, they have a physical reaction in our bodies that are going on all the time. So as a leader or manager, you know that when your team has a big problem or something surprises you, there's an activation that happens in your body with that. And we oftentimes overlook that and kind of just speed past it. I believe that there is an invitation to slow down and be present with that and listen to that, so that you can access this broader bandwidth of information that's there, that provides you safety, but that also provides you with systemic information that you need to be able to navigate complex problems and systems. And I also believe that that input that's there for you to generate a safe space for your well-being is exactly what your team and the relationships you have, as well as the systems you're in, need in order to do something new or something different. So there's a process with this. There's an invitation to have an inquiry within yourself about what's going on systemically. Now, that skill, it needs to be developed and it needs to be mentored and trained and coached, because even though it's innate and it's natural and we're born with it, we've kind of forgotten how to do that. And so it's about remembering again how to tune into what's going on inside of you, so that it can help you reinterpret what's going on around you as well. And it's an art, but it's also a very natural ability and skill that we have within us, that's waiting to be unearthed. And so as I work with leaders and that are moving in that journey from command and control to something new, they find it so refreshing, just like I found it really refreshing, that I could put myself at the top of my own list to take care of, feel safe, and get access to the information I need to help my team and to serve them and to transform the systems we're in. So for me, again, this is why I'm in graduate studies looking at this, because the thesis that I've got is what I'm explaining to you, and now it needs to be field tested. I know I've got lots of anecdotal field testing that I've already done with teams, but now it needs to have some more robust research. And so that's what I'll be doing over the next year.
Interesting. We'll be following that. You can be sure of that. I'll be following that. But this sounds all very, very good, of course. But can you give us a practical example? One practical example that might resonate with when you talk about this systemic input and then listening to what's going on inside your body and how that is related to what is going on for the other. That part, it reminded me of that. Sometimes I can struggle with, can I cancel a certain appointment? And I sometimes hesitate, but I now experienced a few times that when I question whether an appointment should go on or not, and I cancel it, it's 10 out of 10 times also for the other person the best decision in the moment to reschedule. So that was a very practical and very close by example,
Right.
at least for me. But maybe you can give us some more example, one
Yeah.
more.
And this is part of why I'm going to research this, because if I was to listen to what you just shared, I could say, well, it stands to reason that it's statistically possible that the reason why the other person um, is also cool with changing that appointment is because they're just as disrupted and busy as you are. And
Yeah.
so that's because I have the same kind of thing that happens all the time. That said, though, you're tapping on something that I've found in my work over and over again, that there is sort of this prioritization that can happen systemically when you listen. And I discovered this by accident, because when I've been a manager or a leader in really urgent cultures, of course, I've got my agenda about what's going to be done. And I've got my to-do list, and I've got things that need to be done that I have prioritized. And what I found when I started to work like this and slow down and be present and listen and to tap into what was going on inside my system, I noticed that I started to get the capacity to be able to just step back a little bit when repeating nuisances would show up in my day. Maybe it was a person that kept coming to ask for my attention that was not on my to-do list,
Yeah.
and I just kept pushing them away. Maybe it was a circumstance in the operation that kept showing up again and again, but I don't have that as a priority. I have this as a priority. And like I said, I discovered this by accident. You finally go, okay, I'm going to take care of the person knocking at the door. Okay, I'm going to take care of the thing that keeps popping up that's interrupting my day. What I found with that was that more times than not, in a statistically sort of valid way, like above 50% of the times, it felt like more like 80% of the time, when I addressed that knocking door or that task that kept distracting me from what I wanted to do, when I did those things, it shifted and changed the rest of my to-do list in ways that I could not have forecasted or expected. And I got 9 things done when I only was going to, and my whole day would lighten up a little bit. So I started to notice this, and then to the best of my ability, practice it. Like, oh, that's showing up. Something's emerging and asking for my attention, rather than, oh, this is a nuisance and it's giving me a activation in my body that I don't like. And so again, back to slowing down, I would slow down and notice that activation oftentimes would put me into actions that created a perpetual busyness. But when I started to slow down and notice those things that were at first a nuisance, they were actually inviting me into a systemic shift that would shift my whole day.
Yeah.
So, as I look at that, again, that you could explain that in lots of different ways. And so, again, back to researching this, we need to research this, I think, so that we can understand what's going on there. But I think that there is a constant conversation that has no words that's going on in our work and in our lives all the time. And, when we slow down to really listen to it and interpret and translate what's going on, we get new information, which leads us in new directions, which is really important if you're in a system or in disruption where you keep experiencing the same problems over and over again. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but that's kind of what pops up for me.
Yeah.
The example that I can give you at a team level is really anytime, if I go back to right to the beginning, when I first started doing this work with a team in a very urgent culture, I didn't have all of the words that I have now. Like I didn't know really what I was doing. All I did know was that I wanted to create a safety for me and for my team and to connect relationally in a different way. So what I did is I created a meeting where our only intention for that meeting was to check in with each other and to spend time with each other and to create enough safety that people would begin to really talk about what was going on for them, not with the intention of fixing anything, but with the intention of witnessing them and just being with each other.
Yeah.
Sounds so simple, but it was actually really hard to do that at first because everybody was so focused on operational stuff.
Yeah.
But when we did that, what we found was that an energy started to show up where people had more energy for their work. They started to have each other's backs in a different way. Some of the conflicts that were there the volume got turned down on those. And then as we did that over time, and I started to teach them some of the skills that I'm really clear on now, they came back from home and they started to say, "Hey, my wife told me, my husband told me, whatever you folks are doing at that meeting, please don't stop because you're more present at home. You're actually different with us, with the kids, with." So when people started saying that, and I got that message several times from different people in that group, I knew, man, this is something that we need to really look at. And it's something that I want to do because in urgent cultures, typically speaking, work becomes such a drain on your life that you have no
Yeah.
energy at the end of the day when you go home. And that's what my experience was. That was our team's experience. And that's why I actually implemented this at first, trying to find a way to do something different. By accident, I found out that when you create a space like that, it flips the whole script because now people might go home tired, but they go home also energized
Yeah.
to live their lives and to have relationships with the people around them that they love. For me, I think, man, if you can create a workspace where you're getting supported to be your best at work and at home, we have got to learn how to do that because right now the suffering that exists in places like healthcare or education or social work is so high that our systems are breaking down. I don't think it's any surprise, right? So my intention is, yeah, could we create, is this something we can harness and to learn how to do in our workplaces so that we nourish our human spirit and get the work done too? That's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wonderful. So for now, let's keep it to this and then maybe continue next week or some other time because there's lots more that I want to ask. Uh, and
I love, so I'm looking forward to the next one because I feel like, man, I'm in the Dutch hot seat. This is
yeah,
great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the end. I trusted that served you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can ask me there. And also, as I promised, there's a free resource available for you if you go to my website, which is www.tracehobsontraining.com. Or you can just click the link in the show notes of this episode. You will go right to being able to take the quiz to find out what your healthcare leadership superpower is. And it's going to be really helpful for you if you're not really sure, you don't know what that is. Well, this will help you to identify what your superpower is and how you can take a very quick couple of steps towards developing that. I trust that serves you as well, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Now, until then, remember to be a safe space. Thank you again for getting to the end of this podcast. And if you enjoyed this and you found that there was value in it for you, my invitation is for you to subscribe for future episodes that come out weekly on Tuesdays. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to being with you next time. Now remember to be a safe space.